Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, June 26th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about birds that cause problems in the garden, composters avoiding contaminants, and starting a market garden when you're 60. What would it look like? So let's do it. All right, happy Thursday to you all. I hope you all enjoyed our farmers market special yesterday with Cat Fields White. She was brilliant and was very fun to record that one. We are still in our little heat dome here in Kentucky, so I got some harvesting and other stuff around the farm done the last 2 days, but it was slow going. So in the afternoon yesterday, we took a delivery of vegetables and then went bowling with the kids. If you don't know about it, there is a site called kidsbowlfree.com, not a sponsorship or affiliate or anything, but that site, you can find bowling centers basically like all over the country where in the middle of, let's say, a nearly 100-degree day, you could, instead of being outside in that weather, take the kids bowling at non-prime times of the day for the bowling alleys and enjoy 2 free games for the kids. I think adults pay some sort of nominal fee for the season, but it's a good out-of-the-heat activity if you were looking for one, and bowling rules. So there's that. Anyway, it is Thursday, which means we are going to try and get caught up on some Patreon questions. So today's first Patreon question of the day comes to us from Lee Kossib, who writes, quote, "Hi, Jesse. I'd love to hear your and anyone else's on here experience with birds in the garden. Do they steal seeds of direct seeded items? What benefits do they bring more than eating bugs you may not want? You've mentioned birdhouses, and I see them in the B-roll. All things birds and go. Thanks for being awesome." End quote. All right. Thanks, Lee. This is a fun one. Great question here, and maybe one I should have used when I talked to our friend Becca back a few weeks ago about birds. So I will do my best to tackle it here. By and large, birds are good guys in the garden, but with any wildlife, there is a balance there, and birds are not exactly thinking, I should not eat this bug because it is a beneficial insect for a farmer, but I should eat this one because it hurts their crop, or I should not peck this piece of fruit here or dig up this corn seed because I need the gardener to have success. Birds will eat fruits, they will eat seeds, they will eat the good guys. Birds are going to bird. For the most part, they care not about the farmer. Gardens are just a place of food like any other to a bird, albeit perhaps maybe a bit more convenient depending on what the food is. However, at the same time, I don't want to be flippant about it because birds can cause a lot of damage and be pests that are exceedingly difficult to keep out. So how should we think about this? How should we think about birds? First, each bird issue has to be treated individually if it is becoming an issue. Let's say your issue is crows digging up your sweet corn, for instance, as it germinates. The solution there is not getting rid of the crows per se. That's going to be a tough challenge, but rather limiting access to that crop. For us, that usually means adding a strip of row cover to make sure that the crows can't easily access the germinating seeds and just go down the row, killing the entire plot, which a small murder of crows will absolutely murder a large plot of sweet corn, no problem. Or maybe they are pecking the tomatoes. In that case, you could use some deterrents like the old CD trick. That one actually worked all right for us for a little while. Hanging some CDs, which you theoretically still have, or you can find them somewhere, around the garden. Research shows that most deterrent measures do not last for long or do not deter for long, though perhaps long enough to harvest or at least slightly break the habit depending on the crop issue. One issue that we have with birds is that they love to land on tomato trellising, and sometimes they fertilize the ripe tomatoes, making them unsellable. So that becomes a more complicated issue to manage because they may also be doing good things like eating tomato hornworms or other pests, while at the same time ruining a little bit of fruit. Do we try to prevent the birds or accept a small amount of shrinkage is kind of the question. We still don't sell contaminated produce, but we find that the good is likely to outweigh the bad here, and it is usually not enough loss to make a huge difference. So in that case, it's worth having the birds around enough to lose a few sellable tomatoes or peppers here or there. It gets more complicated in things like orchards or on fruit farms where they are truly just ruining large amounts of fruit or just consuming it. Certainly, to some degree, there is always some sacrifice that will have to be made, and the extent and financial cost of that damage is going to be different for every farm. However, birds generally reduce pest issues in many crops, according to research. There are some mixed results out there, but by and large, the presence of birds can reduce herbivorous insects significantly in things like cucurbits and brassicas, but at least in one small study, less so in Solanaceae, which I thought was interesting, potentially because the birds were eating predatory insects referred to as intra-guild predation. Basically, they're eating the good guys. Of course, where birds become a problem, say in fruit scenarios or possibly grain, well, there's a bird for that. Quoting one review of the literature on the subject, quote, constructing nest boxes for the predatory bird species American kestrel in Michigan, sweet cherry orchards resulted in significantly lower abundances of fruit-eating birds. In this instance, the authors calculated that for every dollar spent on constructing and maintaining a kestrel nest box, $84 to $357 of sweet cherries would be protected from bird frugivory, end quote, which frugivory may be my new favorite word. That may change when I have more fruit to sell. But I guess the long and short of it is that birds are generally good, and you can to some extent fine tune through habitats and nest boxes what birds you may want to cultivate and those which you may not want to. This, of course, is going to be different for every grower in every region because we do not all grow the same things, have the same insects, or of course have the same birds. So learn to identify the bird and the damage, and then start digging around in the research for solutions because you'd be surprised how much is out there. Researchers recognize the importance of birds and ecosystems for managing pest problems because the damage can be quite significant, but so too can the advantages. All right, I hope that was, if nothing else, interesting. I will link a couple of the articles I referenced in the show notes that review a lot of the literature on the subject, and one that is relatively easy to read as far as research goes called The Good, the Bad, and the Risky. Can birds be incorporated as biological control agents into integrated pest management programs? That's a good one. Has a lot of good info in there. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, composters managing their compost ingredients, BRB. I brought some alliums for us right there.
Today's episode is brought to you by FarmRaise. Still struggling with your balance sheet? Your lender's asking for a balance sheet and you're stuck with a spreadsheet mess or guessing your numbers? FarmRaise Tracks takes the stress out of farm finance. With one click, you can generate an accurate, up-to-date balance sheet that shows your assets, liabilities, and equity. No accounting degree required. You'll be ready for loan applications, tax season, or just a clearer picture of where your farm stands. Join thousands of farmers using Tracks to build stronger businesses. Get 20% off with code NOTIL20 at farmraise.com for the lifetime of your membership. All right, back to the show.
If you, the listener, enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's second Patreon question comes to us from Martin Kemeru, who asks, quote, in one of your videos, I believe it's called something like Types of Farms You Hadn't Thought of, or something similar, you mentioned that we need not only good composters, but composters who care about their feedstocks / what they make their compost from. Could you possibly expand on that / give suggestions? Most of the feedstocks I can think of that are readily available are inherently going to be mixed products of organic and non-organic waste if you want to produce on a scale large enough to make a full-time business. At least in my area, I don't think there would be enough organic food scraps, manure, etc. to sustain an all-organic composting operation. The only thing I can think of is possibly making a deal with some organic food producing factories, getting the fruit pulp from a juice or cider operation, for example. Do you have any ideas / suggestions? Many thanks. End quote. All right, Martin, great questions here. Thank you. So the odds of being able to find all certified organic inputs for a compost operation are basically zero, unless, like you said, you were taking the scraps from a certified organic food processor as your feedstock, in which case that would be cool, but is not entirely necessary. Technically, to make organic compliant compost, you do not need to use all certified organic ingredients. That may be something that isn't super well known. You just have to follow the certification rules, the compliance rules. There are a few things that have to be left out, like biosolids, but for the most part, most food scraps and that sort of stuff doesn't fall into that. The greater concern when it comes to compost feedstocks, as I was referring to it, feedstocks just being the technical composting term for what compost is made out of, is chemical contaminants, not so much on food scraps, but in things like hay, straw, manure, grains, grass clippings, that sort of stuff that is often sprayed directly, or in the case of manure, it survives the digestive processes. Primarily what we are talking about are persistent herbicides whose lack of water solubility make them difficult for microbes to break down and can take several years to be rendered like non-threatening to your plants, even in the composting process, though I will say that how long this deactivation of these persistent herbicides takes is somewhat debated. Now, Another concern is things like PFAS or forever chemicals, which are also notably not very water soluble. That's literally their point. They are used as waterproofing and or fire retardants. But these chemicals have been linked to several diseases and cancers and can contaminate crops readily and the land as well for a long time. And although these PFAS forever chemicals are not super common in compost now, after recent contaminations have highlighted the concern, it is something that composters must be aware of. One way in which they could make it into the compost stream beyond human waste, called biosolids, which is not allowed in many commercial compost, but certainly not for organic production. Anyway, one way PFAS also makes it into the compost feedstock stream is through things like waste from paper mills and certain cardboard boxes. They are also notably found in some compostable, quote unquote, food containers, which for a commercial composter, plastic and containers like that and forks and such are such a huge contamination issue, not just for the potential chemicals involved, but also for the annoyance they cause and the labor cost of having to get them out of there. For me, I want to know that my composter cares about those things and is even frankly aware of these issues and is doing what they can to mitigate the contamination risks. I've heard of composters that ask anyone who wants to deliver waste materials to sign contracts saying, to the best of their knowledge, the feedstocks they are bringing do not contain one of those potential chemicals, or they are not a general carrier of those kind of contaminants, and so on. It's always going to be difficult as long as we allow these sorts of chemicals at all in the world, and composters will always have to make sure the process is carried out correctly to mitigate any contaminants that snuck through. But I suppose that's all I mean by saying composters who are considerate about the materials / feedstocks they employ are important, and we need more of them. Anyway, does that answer the question? I hope so. Otherwise, it's break time. And when we come back, starting a market garden in the later years of life. Be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. If you're listening to this, you probably found 5 rare minutes to breathe. But what got pushed back further down the to-do list to make that happen? If it's your CSA newsletter, you're not alone. Farmhand's new newsletter builder was made for busy farmers. It automates weekly emails, drives add-on sales, and makes it easy to keep your customers in the loop without spending hours behind a screen. It launches this summer, but our listeners can request early access now. Visit farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. All right, our third and final Patreon question of the day comes to us from Andy at Up the Plots, who writes, quote, "Hey Jesse, what would be your advice to somebody wanting to start a part-time market garden in their 60s? For context, I live in coastal South Wales, UK, zone 8/9, equivalent with swings. I grow for home use, but looking for something to keep me physically and mentally active in my later years and earn a bit of money. Smiley face emoji. Cheers, Andy," end quote. All right. Thanks, Andy. Fun question. I think there are a few ways to tackle this. First, no matter if you're in your 20s or 60s, starting a business is just starting a business, and all the steps must be followed or it's just going to be a waste of time and money. Period. There's really no way around that. Build a business plan, establish your budget, all the not very sexy stuff that it takes to start a farm business has to be done. Yes, even for like a side hustle. I mean, you could start by just saying, like, what does a little money look like specifically? Like, if you want to earn an extra, let's say 15,000 pounds this year, to use your currency, really math it out and see what it would take for you to actually make that much money. How much does it, say, a bag of lettuce cost locally? How many would you have to produce to achieve the number that you have in mind? Who would buy it? How much would it cost to produce a unit? Those sorts of things have to be like written down and budgeted, because it's not always so easy to just make a small amount of money without spending more than you're making. In fact, let me say that a different way. It's easy to spend more money than you make in market gardening. So make sure you're not doing that if earning a little bit of money is the goal. Next, I would suggest thinking small and simple. A handful of crops, fast turnover, fast access, not too heavy or labor intensive, like things like carrots or beets or those sorts of things, maybe greens, arugula, lettuces, microgreens, that sort of stuff. Not that you can't handle it, but assuming you'd like this business to go on for a while, it's worth starting a business you can do well into your 70s. Now, that doesn't mean you can't grow things like beets and carrots, but maybe it's also something lighter, like radishes and those sorts of things that are a little bit easier to carry, or maybe it's flowers. Figure out roughly what it would take to make money on it. How you would sell it, how you would store it, the kind of bins you would use. Just math it all out. Also take a look at the market and see if it's saturated with whatever it is that you're thinking you want to grow. Those sorts of things have to be done no matter your age, no matter what you want to do if you want to try and make money on anything. In my opinion, just don't plant a thing to sell until you know how you're going to sell it and all those other little details. Are you going to do a farmer's market, selling to chefs, neighbors? What's your goal? That may also, honestly, doing that work may determine what you grow and how you grow it. Like neighbors will only tolerate so many radishes and lettuce heads, so you may have to diversify to bring veggies from other farmers. Just whatever the market is, it will help you determine what you can grow. In fact, collaborating with other farmers might be a good idea to help you flesh out your offerings. What can you purchase in bulk from other growers that might be hard for you to produce yourself? Of course, I've done a video on all of this a while back that I will link in the show notes, but think too about processing this stuff. How are you going to wash it and cool it and store it and package it? Starting even a small market garden, in order for it to be successful at least, just requires a pretty simple but thorough plan of attack, no matter what age you are. I do definitely think anyone at any age could be involved in agriculture, but what I always fear is someone spending their savings in a way that doesn't make them any money and sticks them in a job that is physically and mentally demanding. A good face plan can prevent a bad face plant. I actually just kind of stuck the word face in the beginning of that sentence because I felt like it worked. Then it kind of made the whole sentence come together. I think it did. You're allowed to do that in English. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. Thank you, and thank you to all the Patreon members for all of your support and great questions. Don't forget that No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook at the Seed Farmer at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of June, soon to be July, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Dale Bosenberg, JW, Lindsay, Spencer Katz, and Michael Liang. All good names this week. All right, so returning to our little girl in her garden. So one of the little tasks that our little girl doesn't love so much is anything that has to do with being in the tunnel where she stays. It's dark and wet and you have to be quiet, but her mom helps her as best she can to enjoy this experience. Sometimes they pretend that they're alligators living in a sewer, or sometimes they pretend they are bats and they hang upside down from some of the pipes. They play a lot of hide and seek. Her mom kind of insists on it sometimes. The little girl especially likes the game they play where they try to disguise their harvests and will pile stuff in front of them and make little forts around them to make it not look like food. And they're good at it. If you didn't know there was food there, you wouldn't see it. One evening, her mom has a somewhat, serious look on her face, and she does this kind of stern look sometimes, and tells the little girl they are going to play a long game of hide and seek tonight. Then a loud boom sounds just outside of the tunnel entrance, and the mom smiles and puts her hands over her eyes and starts counting quietly. 50, 49, 48, and we will hear the end of this story tomorrow, provided we have some Patreon signups, I suppose. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you then. Bye.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Nicole Byer, helping you make those rooms flyer. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild! Like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Ooh, fierce! This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
It's the July 4th sale at Bray & Scarf, going on now with huge savings throughout the store. Save up to 40% on GE Profile and Cafe appliances. Or step up to luxury with free installation on select Monogram appliances. Special financing is available. Shop local and save this July 4th at Bray & Scarf. Visit any of our convenient locations or go to brayandscarf.com, where it doesn't cost more to get more.